Hey guys, it's Eric with Painting Business Pro on the Painting Business Pro Show, and today I've got Matt. Hi, Phil, out of Richmond, Virginia, with me, and I'm excited to share his story with you. I actually don't know his whole story, but I know his results, and he's been in business for 5 years, almost exactly to the day. And in 2023, he did about $990,000 in business. And this year he's on pace for 2.5 to 3 million in business. So big things have changed for him in the last couple of years. And I think a lot of people are going to relate to his story, but there's going to be some great gems we pull out of this. So hope you enjoy our conversation. This is the Painting Business Pro Show, where we share inspiring stories from people who are just like you, who have created extraordinary results in their business and their life. We'll take the mystery out of it and show you behind the scenes exactly how these results happen. There's a simple process and a roadmap to follow to create life-changing success in business. You are capable of more than you realize. So listen in, discover what's possible, and let's unlock your potential. Let's go. So what up, Matt? Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely, man. Excited to do it.
All right. So first, man, let's just start with give me an idea of how things are going now. I know the revenue's on track for 2.5 to 3 million, but yeah, fill us in on what your business looks like right now.
Absolutely. So this year has been better than it could even been expected. We had phenomenal January and February months for sales. I actually broke a personal record in February, which is usually not a good month. But we actually sold, I think it was like 239,000 in the month of February alone. And I actually just had my first baby last week. I turned 29 years old tomorrow. So a lot of exciting stuff going on. But right now, the way the business is structured, I have an office manager, a production manager, 2 in-house crews of painters. I just hired my brother-in-law to come on as like a salesperson and production manager hybrid. And then we also work with about 4 or 5 different subcontractor crews. And like was stated, is we did 990 in revenue last year. This year we're on pace for like 2.5 to 3 million. We've done over 650 so far, and we're about to really kick up marketing and stuff like that.
4 months in, 650, 4 months in, and that's some of the slower months. So, yeah, right there. That's amazing, man. Congratulations on the baby. Is that your first?
Thank you, man. Yeah.
All right. Very nice, man. Good timing to have things going really well with the business.
That's right.
That's killer. I saw in her notes that you were going to have a baby, but I didn't even put together that maybe you had it before we got on.
Yeah. It was perfect time.
How is the first week going?
It's going well. This is my first week back to work. Obviously missed all last week. And man, I came back charged up, like just ready to, like, I love this. So like work has been one of those things that like, there's definitely been some stressful moments. There's definitely been moments of tears, wanting to quit, all that stuff, blood, sweat, and tears, so to speak. But there's also been a lot of amazing moments that I could never have imagined. And I love this. Like, I'm obsessed with this. Yeah. So as much as I miss my little girl when I'm at work now, and it's a lot different, I came back to work charged up, like excited to get to it, get some sales going. I was actually 3 for 3 on Monday for my estimates to close out the month pretty well. And even with missing a week of sales, I think we did about 180 in the month of April.
And that was still all you, right?
Yeah, all me. My brother-in-law has not started doing sales yet, but he did sell one $2,000 job last week with absolutely no training. Great. So that was cool.
Yeah, just send him out. You're like, I can't go, man. Yeah. You go.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, so you've got an office manager, a production manager, and then you've got some sub crews, 4 sub crews, couple in-house crews. Yep. But production manager, office manager is all you had at the moment. And when did you hire those 2 people, those 2 positions?
So I'll be honest, I've done things a little premature in a lot of different areas. We have also had an office / shop for about 2.5 years. So I got it way sooner than what anybody would recommend based on revenue. At the time, I got it because we were trying to really have like a kitchen cabinet refinishing division. and we needed a spot to spray cabinets to make it easier than trying to spray in people's garages and stuff like that. So I took a gamble. I mean, my story has been taking a lot of risk and just making it work throughout the process. I also hired an office manager prematurely, and I've gone through a couple different office managers. They all kind of left to their own various reasons, but it has taught me about the hiring process as well. So, and just also helping me grow to work through like losing somebody, and working through that emotions around that of like, crap, what do I do now? You know what I mean? And trying not to freak out that like, okay, I've got to hire someone else and train them all over again and stuff like that. And it's been a lot smoother transition every time I've had to do something like that. The office manager I have now is a freaking rock star, and she is killing it. So I got an office manager for the first time. I believe it was kind of beginning-ish of 2022.
Okay.
At that time,
and that was your first hire?
That was first hire besides painters. Actually,
Yeah.
I take that back. I hired a production manager years ago. He lasted 2 weeks because I was still painting. I was hoping he would fix everything. So that didn't work out. And then once that didn't work out, I decided, what am I doing? I've got great painters. Maybe they're not quite as good as I think I am.
Yeah.
But I need to hop out of the painting, focus on the business, focus on the production management, focus on estimates, and let my crews do their thing. So I took that gamble. And that's when it was just me at the time. I'm setting all my own estimates. I'm doing the production management. I let my crews do their thing. And we worked through that. And then after that, it was the office manager hire.
Yeah, and I wouldn't call that, just to interrupt you real quick, I wouldn't call that a gamble. That was the right move. But
absolutely.
But at the time, it felt like a gamble.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the important thing, because I think a lot of people, Matt, think that way. You're the second person I've interviewed this week who thought they were the best painter in the world. You know, so there's a lot of best painters in the world.
Exactly.
But what did you learn from that? Because I think that's again, I think that's a hang up a lot of people have, you know, because in my notes here from Christiana, it looked like you felt like your business really took off when you finally like said, I'm done painting altogether. So can you share two things? First, when you did decide I'm going to quit painting and took that gamble, what happened after that, and how did things blow up?
Yeah, so a lot happened after that.
Yeah.
So like first is like I had to learn to trust the individuals around me and then help coach them up. You know what I mean? And also I've learned multiple times over the years that I need to delegate the tasks that are not the most important for me to be doing. So like I learned at the PCA Expo, not this past year, but the year before that, the way they framed it was give up the $10 to $15 to $20 an hour task. If you are the business owner, you should not be doing those tasks. You should be delegating those. You know what I mean? So if you're the business owner, depending on what revenue you're at, you should be focusing on the more important things like sales, like production management, like just being the visionary, whatever that looks like. You know what I mean? So whatever I can start to delegate first, I can have people do those tasks. You know what I mean? That's eating up my time, but that can be easily replicated. And then also, you can grow a very successful business with 8 out of 10 painters. You don't need to have the absolute perfection. Most clients are not looking for perfection. They just want a good paint job and a great service. And this is what me and a friend were talking about recently, is like, I have to kind of give that up at like, I think I'm the absolute best painter, but if I've got really good painters and we're doing a really good paint job, but we're also able to give them a better service because I'm stepping out of the painter role and able to manage projects better to make sure everything goes smoothly, or communicate better, or whatever that looks like, I'm actually doing them a better service than me just trying to do a perfect paint job. And then maybe I'm not communicating as well. You know what I mean?
100%.
So there's multiple ways to do things.
Yeah, I think that's also a great point. A lot of people who are great craftsmen, great at the trade, want to do that level of work, but that level of work takes certain level of time. And
Mm-hmm.
most customers don't appreciate it the way the master craftsman does. And so
Yeah.
they're like, I don't want to pay that price for that level of work. And there are some customers who want it. And in that case, great. Like, have those in-house crews go do that level of work and oversee it a little
Yeah.
closer. But couldn't agree more. When was it that you quit painting altogether?
Ooh, um, it had to have been, I think it was sometime in 2022.
Okay. So, what was your revenue in 2022? Do you remember?
So it was at the end of 2022, it was 560.
Okay.
So, I think it was during that year, like halfway through, that I think it was in April actually too,
Okay.
that I put down the brush. And we did about 560 that year. The year before we did like 230 something.
Okay.
So we pretty much doubled every year.
Well, since then,
Yeah.
and that was part of the catalyst, I imagine. So, yeah, so
Yeah.
2021, you were 230. That was really your second full year in business, and you were doing a ton of painting yourself. And the truth is,
Yeah.
it's hard to do much more than that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
hard to do much more than that if you're painting, because so much of your time is taken up doing $25, $30 an hour work. You
Yeah.
just don't have. It's hard to do much more than that if you're painting. Um, that's not 100%. Just to be clear for anyone listening, that's not 100% true. You could build a really killer business doing a lot of painting yourself, but generally speaking, if you're on
Yeah.
all your job sites, that's where a lot of people will get stuck. Is that 2 to 300K
Yeah.
mark? Okay, so then in 22 you quit painting, and you
Hmm.
grew to 546, and then the next year grew to 990, and
Yeah.
then this year you're going to 2.5 to 3. So, what did you learn? Before, because now looking back, you wouldn't call it a gamble, would you? That was just that
No.
was smart business move.
Yeah, that was one of the things that like I look back on. I'm like, I should have done that so much sooner.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And like one of the biggest, I mean, obviously that was like the first biggest catalyst to growth. But the second biggest catalyst to growth was honestly just tapping into resources that I didn't really know were readily available at first. You know what I mean? Obviously, Painting Business Pro was probably the first thing that I took a quote unquote gamble on. And unfortunately, I didn't use the resources to my fullest that I could have back then, because I probably could have had even faster growth in the beginning. But I was focused on the painting
Right.
and wasn't diving into the videos as much as I should have been and stuff like that. So it hurt me in the long run. But then as I put down the brush and I started tapping into resources like that and the Painting Contractors Association, the expos are phenomenal. The first expo I went to was February of 23, so
Yeah.
last year. And it was a fire hose of information.
Mhm.
I think my jaw was dropped to the floor about the entire 3-4 days that I was there. And just hearing so many speakers just talk about, like, I didn't know it was going to be mainly about growing and operating a painting business. It's not really about the paint products and stuff like that. So,
Mhm.
like, I knew it was going to be a little bit of that, but, like, that's what it's mainly about. So just learning about stuff that like I didn't know. Like I didn't know about running and operating a business. I just knew a little bit about painting. You know what I mean? And I stumbled into this industry. Like I wasn't like growing up working with my father doing painting or whatever. Like I stumbled into this business, and I've never worked for a painting company. I was self-taught. So it was just something that I kind of just did and was figuring out as I go. So then, and I didn't go to college either. So when I started tapping in these resources and started learning about like what it looks like to actually run a business and paying attention to data and numbers and like, hey, your gross profit should be 50%. And what that looks like is like labor should be like 35 to 40 and material should be 10 to 15%. Like That was stuff I was clueless about. But then, like, as I started to learn all this stuff and started connecting the dots, that's when I really started to see a lot of growth and tracking like job costing and all kinds of stuff. And now, like, I'm obsessed with the numbers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm obsessed with what the sales numbers are, what the gross profit is, what my lead conversion rate is, all this stuff that I knew nothing about a couple of years ago.
I'm making an assumption here, but I've been to a lot of events over all the years in many
Yeah.
industries and stuff. And I know you get to that and you drink from the fire hose, like you said, and there's just tons and tons of info. I think one of the biggest and most impactful things you take away from an event like that is how it just alters your view and your belief of what's possible.
Yeah.
Not so much like the tactics you took away, but it more just
Yeah.
changed your aim. So in
Yeah.
what way did, how did that experience and seeing what's possible, how did it just change your goals or what you were even aiming to do? Um, can you say a little bit about like just how you viewed your business and what was possible after being at the expo?
Yeah. I mean, so I was completely clueless before that. You know what I mean? Like, I just didn't know what was possible, what people were doing and stuff like that. It really did open me up and change my mindset completely. And I started to like tap in, like we were talking about, tapping into those resources more. I hired another coach shortly after that to focus on cash flow, because that was one of my biggest issues at that moment. Was my business was living paycheck to paycheck pretty much. You know what I mean? So I hired elite business advisors and worked with them, and it was phenomenal. I saw my cash flow go up over the year. You know what I mean? So changing the mindset and seeing what was possible was absolutely like one of the main things I took away from it. And like, you also have to implement the stuff. So, you know what I mean? So like, it's just like the saying, like, motivation without action is nothing. You know what I mean? So like, if you don't actually follow through on like that motivation and actually have the discipline to do the little things, like, you're not really gonna benefit from it. But like, being around those like-minded individuals, like, it really does change your mindset to what is possible and what you can do, and you can bounce ideas off them and all that. So it definitely opened things up for me.
And what would you say to your old self who was painting and if you said to your old self, you said, "Hey, man, you should quit painting and start managing projects," and then your old self says, "Oh, man, that's a gamble." What would you say now? Like, what have you learned from that? That if you could pass it along to other people, like you can say it better than I can. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, what have you learned about that?
Yeah, I
Say to
mean,
someone.
the biggest thing I would say is just like, look, like, that's your best chance to be successful and faster. All right. Trust the ones that are around you. There's a reason you've got the people working with you training, because you trust them and they do a good job and you've trained them some or whatever it may be. If you really want to grow your business and build, I hear you talk about it all the time, like, build a life where you have freedom and can really do things for your family or take days off or go on vacations or build the life you want to live. Like, that's how you do it. You don't do it by continuing painting 40, 50, 60-hour weeks. You do it by having the crews painting, and you can manage the projects and starting to really grow your business and focus on the other areas. I would, like I said earlier, I wasn't able to tap into the resources I did have and learn the things I did need to learn while I was still painting. It can be done, but it's a lot more difficult. Like, you can listen to podcasts while you're painting, and I did that too, and that was helpful. But now I can listen to podcasts while I'm driving to an estimate. And in between my estimates, I can sit in the office and look at my numbers, or hop on a Zoom call with a bunch of other business owners that are talking about sales or marketing or production management or whatever it may be, just that is growing my business. So I'm constantly working on my business and not on a paint job. You know what I mean? Because that's just one small factor about what this is. So, and if you're still painting, you just own a job. You know what I mean? You don't own a business, and that's what was told to me. So like, now I'm finally starting to see like the fruits of my labor, where I'm not making like killer money yet, but I have a little bit more financial freedom, and I have a lot more freedom in terms of like my schedule flexibility
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and being able to keep the business running while I go have a baby. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And spend time with my family, enjoy it, and not really stress about work too much. Of course, I'm going to think about it because, like I said, I love this.
Yeah.
But like, I wasn't really worried about the company catching on fire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's an awesome feeling.
What's been your experience with how am I going to find painters that are good, painters I can trust, people who would do a good job? One of the most common complaints you see in our industry is that you can't find good help. What do you think about that?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is that's head trash. You know what I mean? There are good painters, and also like one of the things you really got to focus on is quality individuals. You know what I mean? Like painters is one thing, but like you can't just go searching for the best painters and not look for quality individuals. So like Nick Slavic is a prime example. He just posted on his Facebook page like a week ago that this apprentice, this young kid who seemed like an awesome kid, had been in the industry for all of like 12 hours and was practicing spraying cabinets, and it was beautiful technique. You know what I mean? So like it can be taught. Like yes, painting is a skill that can take a little bit of time to learn and stuff like that. But like I thought I was the best painter in the world, and I only been painting for like 3 years. You know what I mean?
Self-taught.
So like you,
Self-taught
yeah,
for
exactly,
3 years.
exactly.
Best painter in the
Too,
world.
yeah, never worked for a company. I never worked for a company. So like it can be done, but you got to look for the quality individuals, because if you have a toxic culture or an entitled culture, like it is gonna be a headache. It is not gonna be easy. So, and another thing I've learned, like yes, I've used the Indeeds and stuff like that, and that's good. You have to be an attractable company to attract the right people. You know what I mean? So you have to be an attractable leader. I had I've been both sides of the spectrum as a boss. You know what I mean? Where in my early days, I talked down to people when they didn't do what I say or whatever, and was angry or raised my voice, and I did not have success with that. Now I lead in a much different way, and I have my expectations, but I talk to them like a human being. I have a lot more success with that. You can also have great success finding people by asking your current people if you know anybody.
Yeah.
Know anybody looking for a job, for a career, and stuff like that. Some of my best hires have been people in our network. You know what I mean? Like some of our best painters were friends of our current painters. My office manager was a friend of my wife's. It doesn't always work out that way, but it can be a great resource that's not always tapped into.
Yeah, totally agree with you on all of that. I'd underline what you said about being, if you want great people, you've got to be a place that great people want to work. You got to be a great boss. You got to provide good money. You got to be organized. You got to be on your game. You got to be you got to have the character that someone wants to work for and work with. I mean, there's just no shortcuts around that.
And like on that point, like some of the most humbling experiences I've had since running my company, like I've had some of my people tell me that, hey, I could go get more money elsewhere, but this has been the absolute best place I've worked at. You've been the absolute best boss that I've ever had. You know what I mean? And like that made me feel great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That they see that I'm trying to treat them differently than what some people treat them in the past, or what I've been treated in the past. You know what I mean? I've worked for companies where I'm not treated with respect. You know what I mean? I'm treated like some bottom worker. You know what I mean? But like here, we all treat everybody the same. You know what I mean? And like we have expectations, and people make mistakes, but like I don't yell at them about that. I confront them about that and let them know like, hey, here's what we could have done differently. So let's get in the solution and not focus on the problem. But this is what we're going to do differently. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you this, because I'm really curious. What happened from last year to this year? Because this is a big jump that happened. It seemed in some ways that you're even surprised by it.
Yeah.
A little bit, right? You're like, I don't even know what happened in February. So do you have an idea of what happened going from 85K a month, 80K a month last year to 180,000 a month so far this year?
Yeah. So couple of different things happened over the last like year and a half, 2 years. All right. So a couple of years ago, I took a gamble and decided to start working with a marketing company, and
That
did
is a
some Facebook
gamble.
advertisements.
That is
Yeah,
that is a gamble.
yeah, that is it. Well, I guess, yeah, that's a true gamble. All right.
Yeah, marketing companies are
However,
hit or miss gambles.
yes,
Yeah,
they are, and they pop up more and more. And I'll be honest, that first one worked out great
yeah,
for the first year. So the first year, I think I started with him in like May or whatever. So it was like a good like 7 months, something like that, and it worked out phenomenal. Spent
yeah,
like 20,000 and brought in 200 some thousand. So it was like 10x return. All right, and that's the goal. In case any of you are listening and don't know, I didn't know that for a while. So then a little time goes by. The next 6 months of the next year, I didn't really fully track my data like I should. We were getting a ton of leads. We had some good sales months, so I'm figuring, oh, they're doing great. Well, I did a little deeper dive, and this was right after a great record month at the time. And come to find out that, yes, I was getting a bunch of leads. However, I had like only 30% of them were converting to estimates, and out of those, I only had like 10% that were converting to sales. So my ROI was very, very low over those six
yeah,
months. So fast forward a bit, like I've used a couple different marketing companies and stuff like that. So like this year, I did make a switch again, early January. Found a different Facebook marketer who's crushing it at the moment. Shout out Ford Media Marketing, Lucas Jensen. I also got with Micah with Search Click Grow. He's doing he made me a new website. He's doing phenomenal with Google and stuff like that. I also rebranded, which this is something that you don't typically see much in the painting industry, is a huge investment on branding. Now, I don't know if this has made the huge difference or not, but I do think it's made some difference that I'm an instantly recognizable brand. All right, and I worked with Prolific Brand Design on that. So I've done a few different things with marketing and branding and stuff like that, so I can really dominate my market, and I'm a recognizable name and brand and stuff like that. But also, I have remained teachable throughout this process with sales. And I'm also going to tell you a little flip side of that is February had that phenomenal record month. And I was actually asked to speak at the PCA this year. So I spoke on a sales panel, and it was right into February. So I'm feeling that high of that month. March comes around, and I had a bad month of sales.
yeah.
And it was extremely humbling. All right. And my close rate went from 50% to 25%. And nothing else really changed. So that was a humbling experience to remind myself, like, hey, I'm not some sales guru. I might have gotten better at sales, but like I need to remain humble and teachable and stuff like that. I had a phone call with Will Reyes from Battleborn Painting, if anybody knows him, but he just blew my mind when it comes to sales. All right, and what he does, and he takes a lot of his stuff from Jason Phillips, and it was the perfect mental reset that I needed to get recharged and tackle the next month. And then April, we've had a phenomenal month. I actually decided, hey, I'm just going to try raising my prices, which I was already one of the highest in my area. And I raised my prices 15% coming off a bad month at 25% close rate. And this past month, I was at 50% close rate with the 15% price increase.
All right, so there's a lot of things to unpack and everything you just said. So one is, what was your gross profit margin before the price increase?
So that has been, the job costing has been, we've been a little toying with it. Production is one of the things we're working on improving. Last year, it was consistently between 50 and 53%. And we charged $65 an hour last year.
So you were at 53% gross profit or cost?
That was actually true gross profit.
Okay,
right?
minus labor and material, right? So you were
Yeah,
minus labor
yeah,
material, you're at 50, 53. And so you raised
yeah.
price
This
because you
year,
want to pay people more, or because your freight prices went up,
so
or because you want to increase margin?
well, so a few different things. One, this year has started off lower on gross profit. I think we're working through why that is and stuff like that. I think part of it is we have different crew sizes, so I think we're having a little bit of an
Got it.
inefficiency and stuff like that. I also met with Garrett Martell, who does a bunch of postcards and stuff like that. So I've started doing postcards. He suggested I raise my prices. So I'm like, and he suggested 85 an hour. So I didn't jump that far. I jumped to 75 an hour just to try it and see what happens. I figured it would help pay my people more, like you just said, possibly raise gross profit a little bit, and make it easier for subs too. Because I don't want this company to be continually growing and super successful and stuff like that while all my employees are still struggling. I want them to grow with me. I want them to have opportunities and stuff like that. I want to pay my subs good. I want to pay my in-house painters good and have them have opportunities to grow within the company and stuff like that. So, and eventually I want to be able to offer like health insurance and stuff like that. So, I felt like it was the right decision, especially because we invested in the branding and stuff like that. Like we do a very good job when it comes to service, the paint job, all that. So I felt like it was justified to give it a shot. And that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, I got nothing. Here's it would be just a suggestion around it.
Yeah.
Is it doesn't have all the things you said that happen, like you have intentions for. So like I want to pay our people more. I want to increase our margin a little bit. I want to be able to pay for health insurance, et cetera. Make sure that the price increase, you've allocated the different parts of it to those things, right? So
Yeah.
you need to
Okay.
actually adjust your whole P&L, right? Where you say,
Yeah.
okay, so we're not, health insurance is going to now cost us 1.5%. And so instead of paying out 50% labor and material, we're going to pay out 48 and a half,
Yeah.
because 1.5 is there. But that 40 and a half is higher than the old 50 because it's
Yeah.
dollars wise. And then you say,
Yeah.
and actually we're going to pay out 47 and a half, so that we'll take 1% more to bottom line, 1.5% to health insurance, and then the rest is going to the crews.
Yeah.
So just
It makes a
just
lot of
get
sense.
really intentional with your P&L so that it's not, because if all you do is just trying to raise your price and like hope it goes there, it's like it's not going to, depending on how you're paying your people out. It's just going to end
Yeah.
up being like same gross profit percent. Your prices will be higher, so you'll have a higher job size, so the same number of jobs sold is more revenue, it's more profit. But you want to be like really intentional about price changes, so it's not just like it's okay you did it. But my
Yeah.
suggestion in coaching would be, hey dude, don't just like raise it just to see, raise it with a purpose. And the purpose is
Yeah.
like I want to pay my guys more. I want to increase my margin a little more, which is a smart thing to do because the bigger you get, the more you need that margin. Like we're
Yeah.
at like 40, we're at 53 to 55, or something. That's
Yeah.
kind of where we need to be. And our guys are paid really well. And we offer health insurance to everyone. And and then we
Yeah.
still make a really
Yeah.
strong net margin. So
No.
make that price raise, but make sure that you know where it's all going.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And like I said, one of the things that we are focused on right now is production and getting
Yeah.
that back on track so that we are gross profiting what we should be.
Right.
Because lately it's been probably more so between 40 and 45% on average.
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out where the differences are because we've been charging the same thing for a couple of years now until this recent increase.
How are
So-
you paying your sub crew? Is it piecework to sub crews?
So sub crews, we basically establish a price, but when it comes to the gross profit margins, what I'm talking about, that's more so the in-house crews.
That's what I assumed. That's why I just started with
Yeah.
subs, because subs is almost always
Yeah,
piecework.
yeah.
So that's pegged at 50. And then the in-house crews, do you pay them hourly
Some-
or do you pay them per like unit of work or?
We pay them. So the in-house crews we pay hourly. The sub crews sometimes we do have to pay them a little bit more, but
Right.
we know we're going to gross profit like 45%, something like that. But yeah, the in-house crews are hourly, and that's one thing that we're trying to work through now. Is the biggest thing that I can guess is like, hey, we went from primarily 3-person crew to a 4-person crew this year.
Let me. It's not useful to talk about on a show or on video. So I
Yeah.
got to show you stuff,
Yeah.
but send me an email and I'll send you over the structure for how you switch from hourly to piecework, and it'll peg your margins with employee crews too, and it'll give the
Yeah.
motivated people an opportunity to make more per hour, and it'll make the less motivated people quit. And so,
Yeah.
but just switching that pay structure will clean out anyone who's like not kind of slacking off,
Yeah.
which will tighten up alignment and incentives. And then obviously you just need to make sure they're still doing good work. The downside to hourly
Yeah.
pay is you need to make sure people stay efficient. Way harder to do because you'd have to literally watch them all day. The downside to piecework and incentive pay is they're going to cut corners, but that's pretty easy to inspect because you know what a
Yeah.
good paint job looks like. You know what materials should be bought and everything. So I can send you just like the really simple structure for how to switch to piecework, which will
Yeah.
peg your margins with employee crews like you do with subs.
Yeah. And we did add a bonus structure this year too for them to try to help with
Yeah.
that. And that was actually just last month. So
What you're saying, Matt, makes a lot of sense that it does sound like your price is a little low. If you're having to kind of negotiate and haggle with subcontractors here and there, like established ones
Yeah.
with you, and you added a bonus structure, it probably makes sense to do the price increase and probably
Yeah.
not even allocate any of it to health insurance and that stuff for now.
Yeah.
It sounds like the amount you went up by is a pretty appropriate number just from what you're telling me. I mean, at quick glance.
Yeah.
All right. So the other thing I wanted to unpack from everything you said was the original question was what happened from last year to this year? You're doubling sales. Can you attribute that to I've doubled how many estimates I'm doing per week, or was part of it an increase in sales rate?
So the estimates haven't doubled, but the sales rate has probably increased slightly, and the estimates have increased slightly. So, like on average, last year I was probably doing between 12 and 15 estimates. Now it's probably between 15 and 20.
Okay.
And I've done a max of like 22 in a week or something like that.
What was your sales rate in 23?
I think, actually, I could probably check it. I think it was like right around like 40% all of last year.
What are you at this year?
This year we are at.
By the way,
actually,
well, Matt's
this year right now we're at 41%.
okay. So it wasn't sales rate, so it must be.
So actually, let me check one thing. See,
You're at 160K a month now. Last year you averaged 90. So it's like, where's the other 70K a month coming from? It's either got to come from more
average job size too.
How much is your average job size up?
Last year, our sales rate on the so last year our sales rate was like about 40%, but the first half of the year was like 34%, and then the second half was about 45%. Our average job size last year was about 4,300. Mm-hmm. Our average job size this year has jumped to about 6,900.
Oh, that's the difference.
Yeah.
So the difference isn't.
And we have had a couple of bigger jobs land this year. Like we did land a $90,000 commercial job. I just closed on a $46,000 residential job this past month, a few weeks ago. So
yeah. Well, look, here's the thing is, I think it's the part of the reason I'm asking is just for people listening because I'd want to know, like, dude, how did you do it? But part of the reason I ask is I have found, man, in my own companies, with my own teams, my own partners, and obviously coaching hundreds of people at Painting Business Pro that a lot of people misattribute what happened, why they failed or why they succeeded. And if we look, it's not, I mean, you could look year over year. It sounds like your estimates are up a little bit, but maybe that's like 20%. But the big difference is that job size is up like 35%. That's the big one. And so that would be like, okay, so marketing is good. It's going well. But really it's like, how do I land more of these big jobs? Because that's the thing you want to be able to duplicate. Otherwise it's going to be a spike and then it's going to drop if those don't stay, because there's 150,000 of sales with those two jobs. Do you know what you've done? Have you done anything special to Landless Jobs? Did you start doing more commercial outreach?
Actually, the commercial job I got, believe it or not, came through GLSA.
Okay.
That was obviously just kind of luck of the draw, basically.
The biggest project, the biggest repaint we did was 700 came from a residential Facebook ad.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that'll happen.
yeah. And that residential one we landed recently was just word of mouth.
Yeah.
Also, like how we do our, I mean, we use Paint Scout, and how we do our sales. Like I've really learned over the years to continually. I think it's all these marginal changes
Yeah.
over the years, like all these marginal changes of like just getting slightly better at sales, building slightly more value in the sales process, having slightly better leads coming in and slightly more leads coming in.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So like just these incremental differences have really made a big difference overall. You know what I mean? If you increase sales rate by a couple percent and increase gross profit a couple percent, like that's a lot of extra revenue right there. You know what I mean? Or increase leads just slightly and lead conversion rate just slightly.
Yep.
You're really starting to see a big difference.
Yeah, it's the power of geometric growth. You know, you get 10 things to improve, or 4 things to improve by 10%. You've got a 50% plus lift, not 40. They stack together, make a big difference. I totally agree with you. That's the right approach. Those will compound and add up to big things. On the marketing thing, Matt. So we mentioned that, and I wanted to clarify what I said, because I called marketing a gamble, and it sort of is a gamble. But here's the way I would look at marketing. It's not a gamble if you. How should I articulate this? If you're going to test one marketing thing out, that's a gamble. But if you're going to test out 20, it's a guarantee of success.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest mistake I think people make, is not realizing that how you succeed in marketing is by testing tons of stuff. And many things will not work. And that doesn't matter, because you spent $5,000, it didn't work, and that might not work for 4 things, and there goes $20K. But then 4 other things you spent $5K on did work, and now you're spending 5 to get 50 over and over and over and over and over, and that makes the other $20,000 you lost insignificant. And so, you said, hey, this first company, they were working for a while, then they weren't. Now I got another one, and there might be another one in another type of agency or another niche, whatever. But all marketing starts with like, I've got to test it, and then I can see how my results are, and then I can either optimize it if it's close, I can ditch it if it's not close, and I can double down on it if it's a home run.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And like you've got to track it accurately. Like that's one of the mistakes, and one of the things I've done right is there's been some times that I haven't been tracking as closely as I should have been, and it's bit me in the back. And then there's been times where I'm really tracking accurately, and I'm able to make the right decisions because of that. Like right now, this year, we're at like less than a 4% marketing. You know what I mean? So like now, especially with bringing on another salesperson, like I'm really about to kick it up, because to get to where we want to be, like I need to. You know what I mean? But also because it's working. So like I had to learn. It's just the same thing as like early on, I had to learn that adding another painter to the payroll is not an expense, because they're producing work. They're producing more work than what I would have. So it's not an expense. They're paying for themselves and making the company money. Same thing with marketing. As long as it's bringing in the return and I'm tracking that and knowing that, it's not an expense. It's bringing in more leads, which turns into more revenue. You know what I mean? So that's one of the things that I kind of had to overcome that hurdle and learn, and continue to improve on.
What was on the other side of that hurdle, particularly with marketing? The hurdle being like, I had to get over the hurdle where like I'm comfortable spending it. What was your view before? Because I'm sure a lot of people could relate to that.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, just fear of spending. Like all you hear is like, oh, you got to spend $2,000 a month, or $1,000 a month, or whatever that is. You're like, I'm barely making it in the business as it is, cash flow wise. Like your company may be paycheck to paycheck like mine was, and I'm like, I don't know how I can afford to spend $2,000 a month. And I took that hurdle, and it brought in a lot of sales. You know what I mean? And if you're making sure you're doing that job costing, you're hitting those gross profits, that means you have more money in the business. You know what I mean? To either pay your people more, or to reinvest in marketing and do everything you need to do. You know what I mean? So Like last year, like I said, I hired elite business advisors, and I really started to dive into cash flow. When I first started, they have like a spreadsheet where it's your accurate bank balance. You're balancing all your payables and receivables, so everything you owe out and everything that's owed in. And I was at 3,000, but was producing I think like 60K a month or something like that. And I got up to over 60K during the year where like I was comfortable not worrying about making payroll.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this year started out a little rough on cash flow because of spending lots on marketing, the rebrand, stuff like that. But I knew I was going to be okay and able to float it and get through. And I've learned little principles like setting up a deposit account for the deposits that I bring in, so I'm not using that in my operating account. So I'm able to really know what is the company's money and what's not. You know what I mean? So like you spend money on marketing if it's working, like you overcome that hurdle and you realize like that's not an expense, that's more revenue and more money to use for your company.
Yeah, and what I want to just point, I mean, if anyone's listening to this, what you can hear in your speaking or Matt speaking is, first of all, the dude knows his numbers. I mean, that's a common theme among people who are growing this much. Like, you got to know your numbers. It's a prerequisite. That precedes a ton of growth. The exception would be sometimes you see a ton of growth from people who don't know their numbers, but what you also see is a lot of unprofitability. When you see someone who doesn't know their numbers and they got a ton of growth, when you look under the hood, it's like, man, that is not as pretty as that top line revenue looks. So that's one theme, that's huge. And I think, you could just hear you through the whole conversation about numbers this and numbers that and obsessed with numbers and knowing your numbers. Take notes from that, everybody. The second thing is you can hear a lot of you've mentioned a lot of people on this, whether, we worked, you took Penny Business Pro course a long time ago. You've been at PCA. You mentioned Jason Phillips. You hired elite business advisors. You worked with, you followed Nick Slavic. You're tapped into a lot of resources, and you can hear a lot of these little things like, set up a deposit account or balance account. And, I don't know what other things you mentioned. There've been a bunch of them littered throughout that it's like, Matt didn't come up with that. Matt didn't go to, no offense, but you're not special. I'm not special. Most of what I know, I didn't come up with. I learned it from someone. You learned all this from someone, and you've been really wise about tapping into the abundance of resources that is available. And you can just hear how much you have learned and picked and grabbed things to start to put the whole thing together. And, there's a lot more to piece together.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I just want to touch on, like, this is something a little bit more personal that I don't always share. Like, I don't share this with clients and stuff. And like, a lot of my people here know it, but like, you're right. I'm not special. You know what I mean? Like, I grew up like a pretty smart kid, whatever, but I also had a checkered past. Like, I was a drug addict. I was incarcerated for a period of time, but I've been sober for almost 9 years now. And I've done what it needs to be done to learn these things from the people that know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? And anybody can do that. You know what I mean? So, like, that's what I love about this. You know what I mean? It's like the painting industry is cool because there's a lot of very good individuals, like just good-hearted people that are willing to teach and willing to be open with their resources and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a cool industry to be in, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know that I mean that in the nicest way possible, that you're not special.
No, I love that. No offense at all. No offense at all.
I mean, that's the whole inspiration for me around like doing what I do is I'm like, dude, I know where I came from. I know how much I sucked at everything. I know how many opportunities I had, and coaches I had, mentors I had. I know how many failures I had. And if I can do it, you can do it. You just need the opportunities, coaches, mentors, systems, and learn from my failures, and you can do it too. And, that's part of what we want to highlight on this whole podcast. Like, look, there's people just like you that can do this too. Like, you can do this.
Absolutely.
Other people can do this.
Absolutely. And like, one of the things that like I remember from your videos early on when I was probably a year in business or whatever, is I'll never forget, and I share this, is I've told my dad this because he's always been an entrepreneur, he's in real estate and stuff like this. I was like, this guy, I remember talking about on his video that he just like basically fell into this, decided to start a painting business. He was I think he said he was golfing like 30 hours a week and working like 10 hours a week and making decent money. And he said to himself, you know what? I wonder what would happen if I just put like just a little bit more effort into this.
Yeah.
And you said that's when like things started to really blow up. But like, it's just one of those things that like, it doesn't matter the background and stuff like that, but like to be able to be aware of like an opportunity and then like really just try to do something about that, take advantage of that opportunity. Like, I think like business owners just think differently. You know what I mean? And they take advantage of the opportunities. They have to take a little bit of risk and stuff like that. But like, it doesn't matter the background. It doesn't matter if you're some master painter or came from a family-owned business, or if you have a business degree or whatever. It's just being able to see the opportunity and take advantage of it and have a little grit. You know what I mean?
You know, I want to say something about that risk. The risk. I take. Some people could look at me and say like I take a lot of risk because I spend a boatload of money on things, but I, you know, whether it's coaches or investments or whatever, like I take a lot of risk, but all the risk I take is very calculated.
Yeah.
So the only risk I take is a risk that I could easily bounce back from.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, you know, if you're just starting, there's ways to not take a lot of risk. You can go in like, you want to start growing your business, like you don't have money to invest in marketing, let's say. All right, well, you can make money by knocking on some doors, doing some jobs, paying an extra job on the weekend. Like you can come up with some money and then you can risk that money. And yeah, you could lose it all. And then guess what? Next month, you go knock those doors, paint a job on the weekend again, and try it again, and do that 3 or 4 or 5 times. And then one time it's going to work. And that $2,000 you spend is going to turn into 20 grand. And now now you never need to do the door to door on the weekends again. Now you've got cash, and now you can take a little bigger risk and a little more frequent risk until over time you start parlaying, you know, these like small calculated risks into bigger ones. And the bigger the risks or investments you make, the bigger returns you're going to get. And so I think there's like a lot of power in just in understanding it that way, because you've taken a lot of risk, but you've done the same thing where you're not taking risks that are going to put you out. It's about taking a calculated risk, because there's also a big risk with inaction.
Yeah. Yeah. Can't agree more.
Any kind of last things you'd want to share with anybody who's listening?
Nothing in particular, man. I mean, I hope everybody takes something out of this. If anybody wants to reach out to me directly, it's Matt Highfill or Highfill Painting. You can reach me on Facebook. My email is matt@highfillpainting.com. Anything, like, I'm an open book. I mean, tap into those resources. They're readily available in the Facebook groups, Painting Business Pro or other coaching programs. That's the biggest suggestion I can make, is just like what we just were talking about, and what most of what we talked about the entire time is taking those calculated risks. You know what I mean? That's what's going to help propel you to building what you always talk about, building a life that you want to build for yourself. You know what I mean? Having some freedom and stuff like that. Like my father, great freedom. I love it. Love it. And that's what drew me to you. You know what I mean? Because my father was very successful, still is very successful. He's been a part owner of many different businesses, and he's still one of the most successful real estate agents in our area. He is 60 years old and still works a ton, and he does love it and stuff like that. And I'm starting to see a little bit more of him and me, or myself and him. But I also want to be able to cut back my hours sooner than he did. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I want to take more vacations. I want to be able to provide for my family and not think twice about it. Like if I want to send my kids to a private school, or if I want to take a nice vacation with them, I don't want to have to think about it. You know what I mean? I don't want to be tied to a company or a boss that I have to request time off. I don't want to have to go and stress about what's going on in my business. I want to create a business in a life where I have freedom.
Yeah,
That's
man.
why I do this. You know what I mean? But I also want to create something for my people too. You know what I mean? I want them to really have a place where they can feel at home at, that they're not just being bossed around, and they can really have a career opportunity here.
Yeah, man, it goes hand in hand. The more you create a company, that's the last part of my thing. Like, build a company people love. It's
Yeah,
build a company people love. Your people love it. Like, it's for them.
yeah,
When you do that, you will have more success. And that's the beautiful
yeah,
thing about business is when you build a better business for you and for other people, it pays you more. It pays you not just like financially, it pays you in fulfillment, it pays you in
yeah,
freedom, it pays you in dignity, it pays you in wealth. Um, and also, you got a little girl, man. I'm so excited for you. My first
yeah.
was a little girl. And so for me, like,
That's
man,
important.
you get to soak up all those precious early years, man, and bond with your
Mhm.
kiddos for life. And that's one of the greatest gifts that you've given yourself is
Yeah,
you've gotten to this point now to be able to do that, man. So super excited for you to have a little girl, dude. It's the best.
thank you, man. It's unexplainable feeling. I was so excited beforehand, but until it happened, like I had no idea. You know what I mean? And now it's just
Did you know you were
unbelievable.
having a girl?
I knew it was going to be a girl, and I'll be honest, I wanted a little boy.
Yeah.
And then when she got here, I was like, I can't imagine anything else.
Yeah.
Like maybe a girl first was best.
Yeah, that's great, man. Yeah, we
It's
didn't know
awesome.
with either kid what we were having, but we had a girl and then a
Wow.
boy. They're 4.5, 2.5. But like, man,
Yeah.
that's the greatest thing is like I can take any time off and go be with them,
Yeah.
and we do. So awesome, Matt. Well, congratulations on all the success so far. I know you're just getting started. There's going to continue to be ups and downs, trending upwards. But
Yeah.
yeah, dude, thanks for sharing. I know this will be valuable for a lot of people.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate you having me. It was an honor.
Great. Hey guys, thanks for listening to the show. I hope you found it valuable. We make these episodes in the show for you, truly. So your feedback is super valuable to us, whether it's, things you liked, things you didn't like, what you want to see more of, what you want to see less of. Any feedback you can give us is going to be super helpful as we continue to evolve and improve the show over time. And if you want a copy of the Fast Growth Roadmap for Painting Contractors, which really simplifies the steps you take to building a business, we've got that resource for free for you. Just check the description or the bio where you're watching or listening to this episode, and you can just click and download that for free, and it should help give you a good roadmap for how to build and scale your business like the people that you're listening to on the show. So thanks for listening in. We'll see you soon.